It is 6:21, KTRS, the Big 550. Jake Hansler, Kelly Jackson, and
Morning.
the gang here. How are you?
It's fine.
We're joined now by ABC News correspondent Ben Barnier. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Jay.
It's the story is kind of who didn't know. It's kind of like I'm shocked. Gambling in Casablanca.
Exactly.
Tell us about the Russian doping admissions.
Yeah, I mean, what's big about this? We all felt like we knew, or we all knew about this massive doping operation in Russia. But what's new this time around is that we're hearing from Russian officials who admit the existence of this program. So it comes from one of the National Anti-Doping Agency heads. The other person also who's been named by President Vladimir Putin to reform the anti-doping system in Russia. And that man said, as president of the Olympic Committee, as a former sports minister, I can say we made a lot of mistakes. And it's on a very wide scale. You're looking at probably hundreds of athletes, maybe even up to 1,000 athletes who benefited from that doping system.
And it's not just benefited, they were participants in, it was an institutional program from what I can tell.
Absolutely, and these are the words used by the head of the National Anti-Doping Agency. She refers to an institutional conspiracy. And when you look at the methods, it reminds you of what was seen here in France with the Tour de France in cycling, with people hiding bottles with samples, with urine samples, finding sophisticated ways to switch bottles, to hide the bottles in places, and it proved to it worked out. At least why it worked out for Russia, including in Sochi during the Winter Olympics, when the Russians won 33 medals, including 13 gold, and the same for London, where Russia won 72 medals, including 21 gold.
What does that do to those athletes that won medals?
Well, first and foremost, the Athletes Federation has been banned, which meant that during the Rio Olympics, made a big difference from Russian athletes who couldn't compete in the events. But what we're hearing now from some of the experts is that this this recognition from the Russian officials might be part of a deal to try and relocate some of the events back to Russia, because there had been many large events that had been scheduled to happen in Russia, and then that was suspended, and it could be part of a deal to allow Russia to relocate those events back to Russia. But one event had not been canceled. It's the Soccer World Cup. It's massive. It's bigger than the Olympics. It's even bigger than the Super Bowl, and that will happen in Russia in 2018 for sure.
How are we, or why are we to assume that, okay, they admit to doing it in the past, over the past several years? Why should we assume that it'll be any different going forward?
Maybe we shouldn't assume that they're going to change anything. This is hard to say. I mean, what we're seeing is that apparently some of the experts now from Russia are going to different locations, including here in France, to see how the anti-doping agencies managed. So they try and show that they're making efforts, but it's just really hard to trust them after this, for sure.
The technology, the cheaters are always out front of the agencies tasked with finding the cheaters. And when you have an entire country like Russia who is intent upon cheating, it's very hard to stay ahead of them.
It's extremely hard, especially when you look at the motivations behind that. I was actually in Sochi during the Winter Olympics in Russia, and it felt like this event had been staged by President Vladimir Putin in order to show Russia as a powerful nation that could win. There was a lot of politics involved in that event. So when there is the financial resources and the political will to win medals at all costs, that's what happens.
And you may not know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there any indication that the pressure was put on these athletes to use these drugs, to participate in these doping programs, whether they wanted to or not?
Absolutely, yeah. From the testimonies we've seen from some of the Russian athletes, they didn't have a choice, and it's the case for them, but it was also the case for cyclists who participated in the Tour de France and were part of a team that was doping in order to get those medals, get the results, and usually they don't really get a chance. And for those who have decided to come clean and show that they could perform without drug enhancing programs, nobody wants to have them in their teams because they can't compete for Russia, so they can't, and nobody wants to have a former cheater in their team. So that's really tricky.
We'll see. I'm skeptical, I would say, is the best word to use. Mm-hmm. I think the apology probably, as you stated, comes at a time where they're sorry they got caught, but now they have to say they're sorry to move forward, and we'll see what happens in the future. Ben Bonnier from Paris, France. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you, Jay.
It is 8:27, 30 degrees. Jay Kanzler, Kelly Jackson.